Hi everybody, this is episode 23. The Redwood Valley Railway has been in operation for 67 years, and today we're going to go for a ride.
This is Railroad Showcase. The first weekend in June is the anniversary meet at the Redwood Valley Railway, and this 15-inch gauge line is truly representative of American narrow gauge railroading. It was built faithfully to a scale of 5 inches to the foot, or 5/12 scale, and don't let yourself be fooled into thinking that this is an amusement park ride. Founder Eric Thompson worked in the engineering department of the Western Pacific. He held patents for railroad hardware he designed.
More so than any other railroad of its size, the Redwood Valley is a museum-quality representation of early 20th century narrow gauge practice.
This year marked 67 years since its opening, a longer history than many prototype narrow gauge lines enjoyed. The oldest steamer currently in the stable is the number 4, which was completed in their own shops 54 years ago and has hauled millions of passengers.
The railroad runs at the very top of the East Bay Hills overlooking San Francisco Bay. The anniversary meet is special because all available steam engines are put into operation on a single day, with double and sometimes triple headers being common. Visiting engines from other railroads can often be seen too. This year, the vertical boilered Glenwood, South Park, and Pacific One Spot was running to the delight of the crowds. And Chris Allen was running his charming little 040.
Number 5 is stopped in the detour.
On what used to be barren hilltops, formerly home to an anti-aircraft emplacement, the railroad now runs through a dense forest of redwood trees planted by the railroad decades ago. So the Redwood Valley has become a well-known institution. It's been in place for so long that anyone who knows anything about 15-inch gauge railroading, and many people who just enjoy railroading in general, know about the Redwood Valley Railroad.
They do, and what's really neat is that it's been running so long that it's now a matter of generations. The children who rode it when it was first built started bringing their children, and now they are bringing their grandchildren to ride the railroad.
Our own little online show. And they've had it's very, very steep. They used to put the tea plantation.
Hard-working children of the Redwood Valley. I slept on your sink.
Oh, I stepped on myself.
This is just like the locomotives that you're seeing running on the railroad. True to life model. It's teaching when you brought a farmer to
You never let it do it. Excellent. Now you can just kind of nudge it out and keep moving.
To cap off the Saturday of the meet, invited guests enjoy a private dinner in the roundhouse. Tabletops are clamped to the elevated tracks, and a good time is enjoyed by friends old and new.
For rail fans who find themselves near San Francisco, the Redwood Valley Railway will be one of the most authentic, historic steam railroading experiences they can enjoy. Just a month after the big boys' trip to Ogden, Union Pacific has announced the 4014 will be embarking on a tour of the Midwest at the beginning of July. Leaving Cheyenne, she'll travel east into Nebraska and Iowa, then north into Minnesota, and just dip into the northern tip of Wisconsin before turning around and coming back down into Minnesota. At St. Paul, she'll cut back over into Wisconsin and travel southeast till they're skirting the southern shore of Lake Michigan into Illinois. At Chicago, they'll start heading west and returning home through Iowa and Nebraska before tucking back into Cheyenne. This trip is the kickoff to the tour of Union Pacific's system that will continue through the rest of 2019, with the next confirmed trip being Pomona, California, for an excursion with the Rail Giants Train Museum October 12th and 13th.
The Association of American Railroads has been battling a case regarding the allowance of Amtrak to contribute to the FRA's new standards and metrics for on-time performance for freight railroads, and even tried to take it to the Supreme Court, which declined to hear the case. Many railroads have said that Amtrak would make an effort to set the standards and metrics in a way that would add burdens to the railroads. The Supreme Court's decision to decline the hearing puts the case to a complete end, and while the AAR is disappointed, when referring to prior policy they are pleased that the metrics and standards remain invalidated.
In some places, scrap metal continues to be a lucrative source of income, especially if you're getting that metal in an illicit manner. On the list of things that people will steal, in Russia you need to add whole railroad bridges. That's just what happened a few weeks ago. This abandoned bridge was 75 feet long and 62 tons. The tracks had been lifted years earlier. Neither the thieves nor their methods have been discovered. And if that wasn't strange enough, that's not the first bridge to have been stolen in Russia. There was another one that went missing in 2008.
The Zigzag Railway is an Australian heritage line in Lithgow, New South Wales, which is known for its iconic switchbacks or zigzags. In 2012, they were forced to shut down until various safety concerns were addressed, but were scheduled to reopen in October of 2013. 2 weeks before they were set to resume service, however, tragic brush fires swept the area, causing millions in damage to rolling stock and facilities. The repairs, expected to take about a year, were further added to when heavy rains caused landslides, wiping out extensive sections of the track. On June 8th, the railway's Facebook page posted this video announcing the completion of the rebuilt line. The railroad is set to reopen later this year.
The Federal Railroad Administration has just awarded more than $326 million in grants for various rail projects around the country. The projects, 45 in total, are spread out through 29 states, with almost $118 million of the funds being allocated to rural work. The funds are provided through the Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements Program and the Special Transportation Circumstances Program. U.S. Transportation Secretary Elaine L. Chao commented, "These investments in inner-city passenger and freight rail will benefit surrounding communities, make grade crossings safer, and improve service reliability."
The Western Maryland Scenic Railroad has been restoring the Chesapeake and Ohio number 1309 since they acquired the engine 5 years ago, and are again postponing the debut of the engine. Scheduled for an early July completion date, the crew discovered additional repairs required on the engine, as well as needed track maintenance. This video produced by management made the assertion that the 1309 would precede the 4014 in service because Western Maryland would be on time and Union Pacific would be far behind schedule.
So, folks, get ready to see what will be America's largest steam locomotive in daily service, which just happens to be articulated, and we'll hold that title until the big boy comes online in 2020. That's a pretty big to-do here for the East Coast, and I want to meet all of you on the platform. So make your reservation today, 1-800-TRAIN-50 or WM.
It has also been stated that due to the 1309's much greater weight, more than 1,200 ties need to be replaced as soon as possible. The added cost of the track maintenance is estimated to be in the neighborhood of around $150,000 and should take about a month.
You know, it's going to be fantastic to see the 1309 running again. And I wish the Western Maryland all the success in the world. But this isn't the first time that they've had to cancel their dates.
Yeah, and especially if you've experienced setbacks in the past, it might be prudent to not make promises too early. And why would you even slam another restoration project in the process?
You know, I get the fact that it's tempting. Sensational comments and provocative comments get publicity. Mm-hmm. But they can really backfire. You know, things can go wrong with you know, making outrageous statements. I kind of prefer the idea that we are all in this together. We're all rooting for each other, all hoping that it's going to work. And, you know, wouldn't it be better if we all just hoped that these restoration projects could all finish in a timely, successful, safe manner? That's an approach that I prefer.
We've been a fan of James May from Top Gear for years. He's done a lot of other programs too. And with whatever he's doing, whether it's cars or random Lego projects or trains, he always does a really good job of presenting the material. As an avid train enthusiast, though, he has done a lot with that a lot of people don't actually know about. One of the ones that he did more recently was this video about why trains can't go uphill, and it's educational and it's really interesting. But it kills me to watch it.
And now, why can't trains go up hills? Now, the smarter ones amongst you will have recognised already, especially if you're a qualified railway engineer.
The information that he presented was absolutely spot on, using easy-to-understand language for the layman, and he got all of his facts straight. But who in the heck did the background and graphics for this video? Who thought this background was a good idea? This isn't the backhead in the cab of a locomotive. This is what happens when a 10-year-old starts playing in the plumbing department.
I can't make any sense of what's going on here. And obviously, some of the handles are off of electrical systems, not steam systems, and some guy just copied and pasted the same graphic 4 times all over. And there are pressure gauges there, but I would be a little bit concerned if the pressure in the boiler was actually jumping back and forth that rapidly.
You will find they produce very little friction, much less than you'd get between, say, a tyre and a road, or even much less than you'd get between your finger and a piece of glass. Train wheels are also very narrow and profiled in such a way that only a tiny part of them rests on the track. If you take a typical 12-wheeled locomotive with a weight of 120 tons, then the size of the contact area between all those wheels and the track is about the same as 2 50-pence pieces, which for people watching in countries outside Britain is 2 coins roughly so big. Which explains why trains are so good at slicing the hands and feet off distressed damsels who have been tied to the railway line by Edwardian ruffians. It also explains why trains are...
So I understand that animating things is difficult and it takes more time, and the more moving parts you have to add into it, the more difficult it gets. So I don't really fault them for not including the running gear or the driving rods. But at least make sure that you're not going to have any steam going past the packing like that. That's a real problem.
That is. That's too much steam.
Here, they actually have animated the running gear correctly, but if you look closely, the gauge is still bouncing back and forth, and that's still a really big problem.
Right. And I've never seen a gauge quite that big and, facing out the cab windows.
And here we have Thomas after he's grown old and bitter.
So I think definitely what we're seeing here is a team of people working on a project, and some members of the team know a lot about railroading, and some of them don't. I can only imagine that James May was cringing when he saw the finished product and just decided it was going to be too much money to ask them to redo it properly. Next, we're going to the Czech Republic and back in time about 20 years to this really interesting TV piece that was shot at one of their mine operations. Let's take a look. So pretty standard procedure here. But wait, look at the contact on the overhead line. I love the switch. It just doesn't get more simple and basic than that.
I like how they have to physically shove the cars over to make sure that they hit the switch properly. Each car he has to adjust.
And there doesn't seem to be any motor controller. He just gets his variable speed by how quickly he taps the wire with the contact. Nice little rotary dump for the ore cars. And here we go again, getting a start by just tapping the line a little bit here and there.
Well, and the perk of having those overhead lines is if you're just feeling sluggish when you go into work, just give it a quick touch and you're just wide awake.
And look, you can see arcing down between the wheels and the rail.
For a simple method of operation, it's very effective, but that's got to be so hard on the equipment. You could hear that electric motor hammer every time they tap that wire.
That's got to be pretty rough on the drivetrain. Next, we're going to change tempo a little bit, and we want to review an art piece that was created by Hugo Rück. It looks like this was done as an exercise in editing and video production set to the rapid jazz beat of a Buddy Rich drum solo. Hugo did an amazing job of capturing the urban landscape, using the motion of the train through the solid forms of the buildings, as well as the motion of the buildings flying by as we sit on the train. This is a very pleasing and energetic video to watch and captures the feel of Chicago's elevated trains. The entire video can be found on Vimeo.
Norfolk Southern has a really good YouTube channel with videos on a variety of topics. Here's one of their informative pieces on signaling.
For more than 100 years, communications and signal systems have played a pivotal role in railroad operations. CNS systems have evolved from manual-based methods in the early days to mechanical devices, then to today's electronic systems that are essential for safe and efficient delivery of customers' freight. In this program, we'll take a look at how communications and signal systems have developed through the years. The foundation of any wayside signal system is the track circuit. Early track circuits were DC circuits fed by a primary cell battery on the feed end and a track relay on the opposite end. The theory of the DC circuit was that the rails served as the conductive path between the battery and the relay, with the rail car wheels serving to short out or shunt the circuit and drop the track relay to affect track occupancy. Primary cell batteries were generally located in a concrete encasement or vault, sometimes underground. These cells were labor-intensive to maintain as they were non-rechargeable and had to be periodically rebuilt or replaced. Modern batteries are sealed and do not require periodic maintenance, with some batteries being replaced altogether using electronic substitutes. In the early days and up to today's modern-day wayside systems, insulated joints served to define the limits of the track circuit. Early insulated joint designs featured components that would wear out under heavy traffic conditions. Component replacements were labor-intensive and usually required collaboration of CNS and track maintenance crews. Early track circuits had the added challenge of operating through jointed rail. Each joint required a bond wire, which was very vulnerable to damage from dragging equipment, theft, or vandalism. The 1950s saw the first wide-scale deployment of ribbon rail to replace jointed rail. With ribbon rail deployment came development of the glued joint to replace the high-maintenance predecessor, insulated joint. Today's glue joints in ribbon rail territory require very little or no maintenance between rail replacement cycles.
They benefit from a large archive of vintage imagery from the various companies they've absorbed. There's a lot of good information on the past and current technology in this piece. If you'd like to see the whole thing, there's a link in our show notes at rrshowcase.com.
Dispatcher code lines and AC power. Some pole lines also carry communication circuits needed for VHF radio base stations, telephones, telegraph, and teletype. Pole lines presented formidable maintenance challenges, especially during inclement weather, which often resulted in broken poles, cross arms, and line wires. Maintaining the pole lines in remote areas where there were no roads required vehicles that could operate on the rail. For many years, railroads used motor cars, which later were replaced by utility trucks equipped with high rail gear. Beginning in the 1950s, Norfolk Southern began signal system replacement programs that led to the elimination of pole lines. By the 1980s, NS had stepped up this effort and was eliminating hundreds of miles per year, with this being done by installing electronic track circuits and burying cables for code line, switch protection, and AC power. Later, the use of wireless systems and audio overlay equipment eliminated the need for much of the buried cable. As signal pole lines were being eliminated, modernizations in the communications area were similarly done to eliminate communication pole lines. The most prominent example of these modernizations was Norfolk Southern's installation of a private microwave network in the 1960s and 1970s, designed to provide transport of voice and data for VHF radio, code lines, telephones, and fax machines. Today's microwave network on NS has 440 stations, covering almost 8,000 path miles.
That concludes episode 23 of Railroad Showcase. Parting is such sweet sorrow. At least for this week. We are coming back next week.
Have you seen anything cool lately? We'd love to hear about it. If you've run across anything that's special that you and the other viewers would like to see on the show, please share it with us.
As usual, thank you guys so much for watching, enjoying the best hobby in the world.
And remember, keep your hand on the throttle and your eye on the rail.